Hey guys, so you think the pirate life sounds exciting, right? Treasure, adventure, the open sea? Well, hold on to your rum, because the reality was slightly less glamorous. Imagine spending 3 straight months trapped on a wooden ship that smells like 1,000 gym socks soaked in seawater and left to ferment in the sun. There's no privacy, no showers, and definitely no Wi-Fi. Your hammock's infested with fleas, and the ship's biscuits are so hard you could use them to build another ship. Every surface on board is either damp, salty, or sticky, with something you really don't want to identify. And if you're lucky, the guy snoring next to you doesn't have scurvy yet. If you are enjoying this, please hit that like button and subscribe for more historical reality checks. Also, I'm genuinely curious to know where you're watching from, so leave me a comment telling me where you are and what time it is right now. I love hearing from all of you around the world, so let's step into the world of a pirate and find out exactly why your modern life is actually pretty fantastic by comparison. Let's start with your sleeping arrangements, because you're going to spend a lot of time wishing you were back home. Forget your nice mattress at home with the memory foam and the supportive pillows. You get a hammock strung up in a space so cramped that the bloke next to you is basically breathing in your ear all night. These hammocks are made from rough canvas that feels like sleeping in a shopping bag. The material is stiff, scratchy, and worn thin in places from years of unwashed bodies rubbing against it. You're swaying with every single movement of the ship, which sounds romantic until you realize that swaying never stops. Not for 1 second. Your body never finds proper rest because your brain is constantly trying to figure out which way is up. The space below deck where you sleep is called the berth, and it's got all the charm of a damp basement crossed with a really dodgy gym changing room. The ceiling is so low you have to hunch over, and if you sit up too fast in your hammock, you'll crack your skull on a beam. That beam, by the way, is coated in a layer of salt residue and moisture that never dries. Everything feels sticky. Your hands are sticky. Your clothes are sticky. The air itself seems to cling to your skin. There's no ventilation down there except for a few hatches, and when those are closed during storms, you're basically sealed in a tin of human beings. Speaking of those human beings, there are about 70 to 100 of you crammed into this space. Everyone is producing their own unique contribution to the overall atmosphere, if you know what I mean. Some lads have been wearing the same clothes for weeks. Others have mysterious rashes they keep scratching. The bloke 2 hammocks over has a foot situation that could probably be classified as a biological incident. The combined effect is like being trapped in a sauna designed by someone who hates you. Your nose adjusts after the first week or so, which is less of a blessing and more of a resignation. Your body just gives up trying to alert you to the problem. Now let's talk about the actual rocking of the ship, because that's going to dominate your entire existence. When the sea is calm, you get a gentle rolling motion that might seem pleasant for about 5 minutes. After that, it becomes the most annoying thing you've ever experienced. Imagine trying to pour a cup of coffee while someone keeps tilting the table. Imagine trying to stand still while the floor keeps shifting under your feet. Everything you do requires constant adjustment. Walking across the deck becomes this weird dance where you're always reaching for something to grab. Your legs develop this permanent half-crouch stance, knees slightly bent, always ready to compensate. When the sea gets rough, the rocking becomes violent. The ship tips to one side and stays there for a few seconds, then crashes back the other way. Your hammock swings so far you nearly tip out. Anything not tied down goes sliding across the deck with a clatter. Someone's tin cup rolls past. A shoe goes bouncing by. You hear crashes from the galley as pots and pans lose their battle with gravity. The noise is constant and unpredictable. Just when you think you've got the rhythm figured out, a big wave hits and everything changes. Your stomach is doing somersaults, your head is spinning, you feel simultaneously exhausted and unable to relax. The seasickness is something nobody talks about honestly. They always make it sound like you get used to it after a few days. Some people do, many don't. You spend your first week at sea feeling like you've got the worst hangover of your life, combined with food poisoning, except you haven't eaten anything dodgy and you can't make it stop. Your mouth tastes like copper, your head throbs, everything inside you wants to come up, but after the first few times there's nothing left. You just get these dry heaves that make your ribs ache. The other pirates find this hilarious, of course. They've all been through it, and now it's your turn to suffer for their entertainment. Let's move on to water, which you'd think would be abundant given that you're surrounded by ocean. You can't drink seawater, obviously. That'll make you more thirsty and eventually drive you mad. So the ship carries barrels of fresh water loaded on before departure. This water sits in wooden barrels in the hold for weeks or months. It goes stagnant almost immediately. Within a few days it starts to smell musty. Within a week it tastes like licking the inside of a flower vase that's been sitting out too long. A greenish scum forms on the surface. Little bits of something float in it. You're supposed to drink about half a pint per day for your ration, and every single sip is an exercise in not thinking too hard about what you're consuming. The water situation means you're always slightly parched. Your lips crack, your tongue feels thick, your throat is constantly dry and scratchy. You dream about fresh, cold water from a tap. You'd give anything for ice. Remember ice? That magical thing your freezer makes? Forget it. The closest you'll get is rain, and when it rains, everyone rushes up on deck with their mouths open, trying to catch drops. Grown men standing there like they're at some sort of sad water park, tilting their heads back, grateful for moisture. The rain itself is salty because it's mixed with sea spray, but it's still better than the barrel situation. Then there's the lovely issue of staying clean, which you mostly won't. There's no shower, there's no bath, there's barely enough drinking water, so nobody's wasting it on washing. You get to rinse off with seawater occasionally if you're lucky, but seawater doesn't really clean you. It just makes you salty. Your skin gets crusty, your hair becomes stiff and weird. It stands up in strange directions and has the texture of old rope. You've got salt in your eyebrows, salt in your ears, salt everywhere. When you scratch your head, you can feel grit under your fingernails. Your clothes are in a similar state. You're wearing the same shirt and trousers for weeks on end. They're stiff with dried sweat and seawater. The fabric has gone from its original colour to a sort of universal greyish brown. You can actually stand the trousers up on their own when you take them off. The shirt has developed its own ecosystem. You've got creatures living in the seams, little visitors who think you're a walking hotel. They bite. Oh, how they bite. You wake up with itchy welts all over your torso. You spend half the day reaching under your shirt to scratch. Everyone else is doing the same thing, so at least you're not alone in your misery. Food on a pirate ship is an adventure in the worst possible sense. Your main staple is hardtack, which is basically a thick cracker baked until it's harder than furniture. These things are made from flour and water, baked solid so they'll last for months without spoiling. The problem is they're so hard you can't just bite into them. You have to soak them in water or whatever liquid you've got, wait for them to soften slightly, then gnaw away. Even softened, they're like chewing on cardboard. They taste of absolutely nothing except maybe a hint of staleness. Your jaw gets tired from the constant chewing. You go through this process 3 times a day, every single day. Now, those hardtack biscuits don't stay pristine for long. They become infested with weevils. Little bugs that bore into the biscuit and set up home. You'll break open your hardtack and see tunnels running through it. Sometimes you'll spot the little residents themselves. The standard practice is to just eat it anyway. Most pirates tap their biscuit on the table first to knock out any visible occupants. But you're definitely eating some extra protein whether you like it or not. You learn not to look too closely. You learn to eat in dim light where possible. What you don't know won't hurt you, or so you tell yourself as something crunches unexpectedly. The ship does carry salted meat, which sounds like proper food until you see it. The salt preserves it, sure, but it also makes it hard as a rock. You get chunks of pork or beef that have been sitting in salt for so long they've basically mummified. The cook has to soak these in water for hours before they're even vaguely edible. Once cooked, the meat is incredibly salty, tough, and has a weird grey colour. Chewing it is a workout. Your jaw muscles will get stronger, which is about the only benefit. The taste is mostly just salt with a hint of what might have once been meat. You swallow it because you need the food, not because it brings any joy whatsoever. Then there's the dried peas and beans situation. These go into a sort of stew that the cook makes in a huge pot. He throws in the soaked meat, the dried legumes, some water, and whatever else is available. The result is a thick, greyish sludge that's served lukewarm in wooden bowls. The texture is grainy and mushy at the same time. Sometimes there are lumps you can't quite identify. Sometimes there are bits of rope fibre that fell from the rigging. Sometimes there's a dead insect floating on top. You fish it out and carry on. The stew doesn't taste bad so much as it tastes of nothing. It's aggressively bland. Your taste buds sit there waiting for some kind of signal and receive only sadness. Getting your daily ration is a whole process that involves queuing on a rocking ship. Everyone lines up at meal times to get their portion served from the communal pot. The cook is usually someone who annoyed the captain and got assigned cooking duty as punishment, which tells you everything about the quality you can expect. He slops your serving into your bowl with all the care of someone emptying a bucket. The liquid splashes, the chunks plop. You shuffle away with your prize and find somewhere to sit and eat, which is harder than it sounds when everything is moving. You develop a technique of wedging yourself between things so your bowl doesn't slide away. Eating during rough weather is genuinely challenging. You're trying to get food from bowl to mouth while the ship tips and rolls. The stew sloshes around. You bring the bowl to your lips and suddenly the ship lurches and you've got lukewarm slop down your shirt. Everyone develops this hunched protective posture over their food, like animals guarding their kill. You curve your body around the bowl, forming a human shield against the elements. One hand holds the bowl steady, the other frantically scoops food in between waves. You learn to eat fast because there's no telling when the next big roll will send everything flying. Fresh food is a distant memory within days of leaving port. Any fruit or vegetables brought aboard are gone within a week. You start fantasizing about apples. Just a normal, crisp, fresh apple. The crunch of it, the juice, the sweetness. Instead, you've got your grey stew and your weevil crackers. Your body starts to feel weird after a few weeks without proper nutrition. Your gums get sore. Your joints ache. You feel tired all the time, more than just from the work. You're not getting what you need to function properly, but there's nothing to be done about it. This is just life now. Drink options are limited to the swamp water from the barrels and something called grog. Grog is rum mixed with water, and it's given out as part of your daily ration. The rum helps disguise the horrible taste of the stale water, which is probably why this system exists. It also provides a mild buzz that makes your miserable existence slightly more bearable. The problem is it's given out at specific times, so you can't just drink when you're thirsty. You get your measure, and that's it. Some pirates save theirs and drink it all at once to get properly drunk, which at least provides temporary escape from reality. Others trade their rum ration for other things, creating a little economy of misery. The galley where food is prepared is basically a box of fire hazards. There's an open hearth with an actual fire burning on a wooden ship. This is insane when you think about it. One wrong move and the entire vessel could go up in flames. The cook has to maintain this fire constantly, feeding it with wood and coal, all while the ship rocks. The pots hang from hooks and swing back and forth. Sometimes they swing too far and spill. Sometimes the fire flares up unexpectedly. The galley is always hot, always smoky, and always slightly terrifying. The poor soul assigned to cook spends his day sweating next to an open flame, stirring pots of questionable slop, probably regretting every life choice that led him here. Storage of food is a constant worry. Everything is kept in barrels and sacks in the hold. The hold is dark, damp, and full of rats. These rats are bold. They're not scared of humans. They've been living on ships for generations and consider themselves equal members of the crew. They chew through sacks of grain. They gnaw on the salt pork. They leave their little calling cards everywhere. You can hear them at night, scurrying around in the walls and floor. Sometimes you see them during the day, bold as anything, dragging off a piece of hardtack. The ship's cat, if there is one, is constantly employed, but always outnumbered. Water barrels are especially problematic because they can't be sealed too tightly, or the pressure changes will burst them. This means the rats can get in. They fall into the water barrels sometimes and can't get out. You can imagine what that does to your drinking water. Nobody talks about it. You just drink your ration and try not to think. The cook is supposed to check the barrels regularly and scoop out any unwanted additions, but he's busy and the light is bad down there. Sometimes things get missed. You develop a strategy of drinking with your eyes closed. If you can't see it, it doesn't exist. Let's discuss your working day, because pirates aren't just lounging around singing songs. Ships require constant labour, and you're going to be doing most of it. The day starts early, often before dawn, because that's when the wind is best, or the captain decided everyone needs to suffer together. You're shaken awake from your damp hammock by whoever's got watch duty ending. They kick your hammock or shout or both. You crawl out still half asleep, your body aching from the uncomfortable night. Your first task is climbing up onto the deck, which means navigating a narrow ladder in the dark while the ship rocks. You're not awake enough for this. You bang your elbow. Someone above you steps on your hand. You emerge into the cold morning air and immediately regret being born. The deck is wet with dew and sea spray. Everything is slippery. You shuffle carefully to your assigned position, still trying to get your brain functioning. Morning tasks involve checking the sails and making adjustments based on the wind. This sounds simple, but involves climbing. You're going up the rigging to the yards where the sails are attached. The rigging is a network of ropes that leads up the masts. These ropes are rough and damp. They're thicker than your wrist in some places, thin as your finger in others. You're climbing up while the ship moves beneath you. The mast sways in a circle against the sky. Your stomach does somersaults. Getting comfortable with heights is not optional. Some of the yards are 60 feet up or more. You're expected to climb out onto these horizontal poles and work on the sails. The yard is maybe a foot wide. It's slippery. There's no safety harness. Your only support is a rope you can lean against, and your own grip. Below you is the deck, which looks very hard and very far away. If you slip, you're going to have a bad time. The wind is stronger up here and it pulls at your clothes and hair. Your hands are clamped onto whatever you can grip. Your legs are hooked around the yard. You're supposed to be working on unfurling or furling the sail, but mostly you're trying not to panic. The sails themselves are massive sheets of canvas, heavy and unwieldy. When they're wet, they weigh even more. You're hauling on ropes trying to position these giant pieces of fabric so they catch the wind properly. It's all done by muscle power. You and a dozen other lads pulling together, hand over hand, while someone shouts timing instructions. Your palms burn from the rough rope. Your shoulders scream from the effort. Your feet slip on the wet deck. You finally get the sail where it needs to be, and someone ties off the rope. 5 minutes later, the wind changes and you have to adjust it again. This happens all day long. Constant tiny adjustments, constant climbing, constant hauling. Maintenance work is never ending. The ship is basically trying to fall apart at all times, and your job is to prevent that. Ropes fray from constant use and need replacing. You're learning to splice rope, which means taking two ends and weaving them together into a solid join. Your fingers aren't nimble enough at first. The thick rope doesn't want to cooperate. An older pirate shows you the technique, his hands moving quickly despite being gnarled and scarred. You fumble along trying to copy him. Your version looks sad by comparison, but it holds together, which is all that matters. You'll be doing this for hours, sitting on the deck, fingers cramping, creating new rope from old. The deck needs constant scrubbing, as mentioned before, but it's worth emphasizing how much you'll hate this task. You're on your knees with a block of sandstone, scrubbing the wooden planks. The goal is to keep them clean and smooth. In reality, you're just pushing dirt and salt around in circles. The seawater you're using doesn't really clean anything. Your knees are bruised from kneeling on hard wood. Your hands are raw. Your back is bent over. Someone always walks past and steps right where you just scrubbed, leaving dirty footprints. You bite back several comments that would definitely start a fight. You scrub those footprints away. More appear. This is your life now. Tar is everywhere on a ship and needs constant application. The seams between planks are sealed with tar to keep water out. Ropes are coated in tar to preserve them. You'll be assigned to tar duty regularly, which means working with hot, sticky black tar that gets everywhere. It's heated in a pot until it's liquid enough to apply. You use a brush to slap it onto whatever needs waterproofing. The tar sticks to your hands even when you don't touch it. It gets on your clothes and never comes out. It has a strong smell, sharp and chemical. Your hair will have tar in it. Your face will have tar smudges. You'll find tar in places you didn't even know tar could reach. Removing it requires scrubbing with rough cloth and oil, which just spreads it around more. Watch duty is both boring and stressful. You're assigned a shift where you have to stay alert and watch for other ships, land, hazards, changes in weather, or anything else important. This sounds easy, but you're doing it for 4 hours straight in all weather conditions. During the day, it's hot and boring. You're staring at empty ocean, seeing nothing, your mind wandering. You have to actively fight, falling asleep, standing up. At night, it's cold and eerie. The ocean is black. The stars are the only light. Strange noises come from the water. Your imagination starts working overtime. Every shadow could be another ship. Every splash could be something sinister. You're exhausted, but you can't relax, because if you miss something important, everyone will suffer. The ship's bell marks time and it becomes the rhythm of your existence. Every half hour someone rings the bell a certain number of times. 8 bells means your watch is over and you can rest. Hearing those 8 bells is the best moment of your 4-hour shift. You're relieved by the next poor soul and you stumble off to find somewhere to sit or lie down. Your legs are stiff from standing. Your eyes are tired from staring. You have maybe 4 hours before you're back on duty again. This cycle continues day and night. There are no weekends. There are no holidays. Every day is exactly the same except sometimes worse. Physical labour in heat is its own special misery. When you're in warmer waters, the sun beats down on the deck with no shade anywhere. You're hauling ropes, scrubbing decks, climbing rigging, all under a blazing sun. Your skin burns first, turning pink, then red, then eventually brown if you survive long enough. Your shirt provides minimal protection, and it's soaked through with sweat within minutes. Sweat runs into your eyes and stings. It runs down your back and makes your trousers stick to your legs. You're constantly thirsty, but water rations are limited. You fantasize about shade, just a little patch of shadow to stand in for 5 minutes. Sometimes you find a spot behind a sail, but then you're needed elsewhere and back into the sun you go. Cold weather is equally miserable, but in opposite ways. When you're sailing in northern waters or during winter, the wind is freezing. It cuts through your damp clothes like they're not even there. Your fingers go numb, which makes handling ropes dangerous because you can't feel what you're doing. You're supposed to tie complex knots, but your hands won't cooperate. You fumble with the rope, trying to make your frozen digits work. Your nose runs constantly. Your lips crack and split. The sea spray freezes on the rigging, creating a layer of ice that makes climbing treacherous. Your feet are blocks of ice in your worn boots. You stamp and move to try to keep circulation going, but you're still cold down to your bones. Sanitation on a pirate ship is a concept so basic it barely exists. There's no bathroom as you know it, no toilet, no sink, no privacy. Instead, you've got the heads. These are holes cut into a platform at the front of the ship, hanging out over the water. You do your business directly into the ocean through these holes. It sounds simple until you actually have to use them. First, they're completely exposed. Everyone can see you. There's no door, no stall, no curtain. You're just sitting there with your trousers down while the crew walks past. Privacy is not a concept that exists on this ship. You get over your modesty fast, or you suffer. The heads are positioned at the bow where the ship's movement is most extreme. Every wave that hits sends spray up through the holes. You're trying to balance on a wet wooden seat while the ship pitches up and down. The timing is everything. You're waiting for a moment of relative calm to do what you need to do. The ship drops down a wave and suddenly seawater shoots up through the hole. You get a very cold, very salty surprise. In places you really don't want salt water. Everyone experiences this, and everyone finds it hilarious when it happens to someone else. You finish as quickly as possible and get out of there, swearing quietly. Toilet paper doesn't exist in any form you'd recognize. There's a communal rope with a rag tied to the end that hangs over the side into the water. This rag is used by everyone for the purpose you're imagining. The rope dangles in the sea, which theoretically cleans the rag between uses. In reality, you've got a damp piece of cloth that dozens of men are sharing. The mental gymnastics required to use this without thinking too hard about it are impressive. You grab the rope, use the rag quickly, drop it back in the water, and try to forget the whole experience. Some pirates prefer to use old canvas scraps or just embrace the seawater rinse method. Nobody discusses this topic in detail because nobody wants to. The heads smell about as good as you'd expect. The wind usually blows the stench away since they're at the front of the ship. But when the wind is wrong, you get the full effect. It's a sharp, pungent tang that makes your eyes water. The platform itself is crusty with dried salt and other substances. The wood is permanently stained. Your boots stick slightly when you walk across it. You try not to look down through those holes because the view is grim. The ocean below is full of waste from everyone who's used this spot for months. Fish have learned to gather there for reasons you don't want to consider. You do your business looking firmly at the horizon. When the sea is rough, using the heads becomes genuinely dangerous. You're sitting on an exposed platform at the very front of a ship that's crashing through waves. You're holding on for dear life with one hand while trying to manage your clothing with the other. Waves break over the bow regularly in rough weather. You can get washed right off if you're unlucky. There are stories of pirates being swept overboard while using the heads, which is possibly the most undignified way to go. During storms, most people just use buckets below deck and empty them later. This makes the already unpleasant berth even worse, but it's safer than the alternative. Personal hygiene is minimal at best. You can't bathe, you can't wash properly. You splash yourself with seawater occasionally and call it clean. Your armpits develop their own ecosystem. The chafing is real and constant. Your inner thighs rub together in damp trousers and the skin gets irritated. You develop interesting rashes in places you can't easily scratch in public. You do scratch them anyway because the itching drives you mad. Everyone is scratching something at all times. It's like a ship full of people with invisible ants on them. You see someone you're talking to reach inside their shirt and have a good scratch, and you don't even react because you'll be doing the same thing in 5 minutes. Your hair becomes a science experiment. Without proper washing, it gets greasy and stiff. It collects salt and dirt and bits of tar. Some pirates just hack their hair short with a knife to reduce the misery. Others tie it back with whatever string is available. Head lice are universal. Everyone has them. You feel them crawling around on your scalp. You feel the itch and automatically scratch. Sometimes you catch one between your fingernails, and that small victory brightens your whole day. There's no shame in having lice because literally everyone does. It's just accepted as part of life. Some evenings you'll see pairs of pirates checking each other's heads, picking out the worst offenders, like apes grooming each other. Your teeth are going to suffer tremendously. There are no toothbrushes, no toothpaste, no dental care whatsoever. You're eating hard food that cracks your teeth. You're not getting nutrients that keep your gums healthy. After a few months at sea, your gums are sore and swollen. Your teeth feel loose when you wiggle them with your tongue. Some pirates lose teeth completely. They just fall out one day into your bowl of stew. You fish the tooth out, examine it briefly, and carry on eating. What else are you going to do? The gap in your smile is permanent. Food gets stuck in these gaps. Your breath is spectacular in the worst way. Everyone's breath is terrible, so at least it's fair. Shaving is possible, but difficult. You need a sharp blade, some water, and steady hands. You have none of these things in abundance. Most pirates just grow beards because it's easier than trying to shave on a rocking ship with a straight razor and questionable water. These beards get long and scraggly. They collect food particles. They house their own population of tiny residents. Your beard itches constantly, especially when it's growing in. You scratch your chin and cheeks until the skin is red. Eventually, the itching subsides into a general irritation you learn to ignore. The beard also provides a small amount of protection from the sun and wind, so there's that tiny benefit. Laundry is theoretically possible, but practically pointless. You can wash your clothes in seawater, but seawater doesn't really get things clean. It just makes them wet and salty. There's no soap worth mentioning. You might scrub your shirt against itself or against the deck, trying to loosen some of the grime. You wring it out and hang it up to dry. The sun and wind do their work, and eventually it's dry, but it's not clean. It still smells. It's still stained. It's just dry now. Most pirates have 1 or maybe 2 sets of clothes total. You wear one while the other dries, assuming you even bother washing. Some just wear the same outfit until it literally falls apart, then get new clothes at the next port or from someone who doesn't need theirs anymore. Your living space below deck never airs out properly. The smell down there is a physical presence. It's thick and heavy, and composed of unwashed bodies, damp wood, stale water, old food, and despair. When you first go below after being on deck, it hits you like a wall. Your eyes water, your nose protests. You breathe through your mouth, but that just means you're tasting it instead. After a few minutes, your senses dull and you stop noticing as much, which is your brain's way of protecting you from reality. You string up your hammock in this soup of stench and try to sleep. Your clothes absorb the smell. Your hair absorbs the smell. You become the smell. Navigation and sailing require skills you don't have and will need to learn through trial and error. The officers know how to read charts and use instruments like the compass and astrolabe. You, as a regular crew member, just know you need to pull the ropes they tell you to pull. But you still need to understand the basics, or you'll constantly be in the way or doing things wrong. The ship has 3 or more masts, each with multiple sails. Every sail has a specific name. Every rope has a specific name. There are hundreds of ropes and they all do different things. Calling them by the wrong name marks you as ignorant, and you'll get mocked ruthlessly. Learning the rigging system is like learning a new language made of rope. Someone will shout, "Haul on the starboard main sheet," and you're supposed to know exactly which rope that is and what to do with it. At first, you just look around confused, while everyone else springs into action. An annoyed pirate will eventually shove you toward the right rope and show you what to do. You grab on and pull with the others. Your hands slip because you don't have the technique yet. You're pulling when you should be easing off. You're letting go when you should be holding fast. Someone curses at you. You try again. Eventually, through repetition and public humiliation, you figure it out. The ship moves in ways that seem random until you understand wind and sails. You can't just point the ship where you want to go and sail there directly. Wind direction matters enormously. If the wind is coming from where you want to go, you can't sail straight into it. You have to tack back and forth at angles, zigzagging your way forward. This means constant adjustment of the sails. You're hauling ropes to swing the yards around. You're climbing up to reef in the sails or let them out. Every time you tack, it's a flurry of coordinated activity. Everyone has a job. If you mess up your bit, the whole maneuver goes wrong and the ship loses speed or momentum. Wind isn't consistent or predictable. You'll be sailing along nicely and suddenly the wind drops to nothing. The sails go slack and hang limp. The ship slows to a crawl. You're just sitting there on a flat ocean going nowhere. It's eerie and frustrating. The heat beats down. The ship barely moves. You can hear every small sound because there's no wind noise or sail flapping. Then, hours later, the wind picks up again from a completely different direction. Everyone scrambles to adjust the sails. The ship heels over as it catches the wind. You're suddenly moving again, which is a relief even though it means more work. Storms are absolutely terrifying. You see dark clouds building on the horizon, and everyone gets tense. The officers start barking orders to prepare. You're reefing the sails, taking in as much canvas as possible so the wind doesn't rip them apart. You're securing everything on deck that could move. You're checking the hatches are sealed. The wind picks up and suddenly it's howling. The rain starts, not gentle drops, but sheets of water thrown horizontally by the wind. You can barely see 3 feet in front of you. The ship is pitching wildly. Waves crash over the bow and sweep across the deck. You're holding onto ropes, to masts, to anything solid. During a storm, you're genuinely afraid the ship will capsize or break apart. The masts creak and groan under the strain. The timbers shudder with each wave impact. Water pours into any opening. Below deck is flooding despite everyone's efforts to seal it up. You're bailing water with buckets, forming a chain to pass them up and dump them overboard. It's exhausting work, and it feels pointless because more water keeps coming in. Your arms burn from lifting bucket after bucket. You're soaked to the bone. You're cold and frightened and exhausted. This goes on for hours, sometimes days. You lose track of time in the chaos. When the storm finally breaks and the wind calms, you're left with the aftermath. The deck is a mess of tangled ropes and debris. A sail might be torn and needs repair. Someone might be injured from being thrown against something. Everyone is exhausted, bruised, and grateful to be alive. You spend the next day cleaning up and making repairs. You're replacing broken lines, stitching torn canvas, checking for damage to the masts and hull. Your hands are shaking from fatigue, but the work needs doing. The ship has to be ready for the next storm because there's always a next storm. Boredom between crises is a real problem. When there's work to do, you're busy and miserable. When there's no work, you're bored and miserable. There's no entertainment as you know it. No phone to scroll through. No television to watch. No books for most people because literacy isn't universal, and books are expensive. You're just sitting on deck with nothing to do. Some pirates carve things from wood or bone to pass the time. Others practice knots or repair their clothes. Many just sit and stare at the ocean, lost in thought. Conversation happens, but there's only so much to talk about when everyone is living the same experience. Card games and dice are popular when someone has them. Pirates will gamble their rum rations, their share of any future loot, their spare clothes, anything of value however small. The games get heated because there's nothing else to channel energy into. Arguments break out over whether someone cheated. Fists might fly. Officers have to break it up before someone gets seriously hurt. The gambling continues anyway because it's one of the few diversions available. You learn to play even if you're not naturally interested, because it's something to do. You lose your rum ration and regret it, but next time you're bored, you'll play again. Music happens if anyone has an instrument. A fiddle, a pipe, a drum made from whatever was available. Someone who can play will perform, and others will sing along. Sea shanties are work songs with rhythm to help coordinate group efforts, but they're also entertainment. The lyrics are often crude and funny. Everyone knows the words because they've been singing them for years. For a little while, the music lifts spirits. You're clapping and singing and forgetting that you're uncomfortable and dirty and stuck on a wooden prison in the middle of the ocean. Then the song ends and reality returns. But it was nice while it lasted. Fighting practice happens regularly. Pirates need to know how to use weapons for when they actually encounter a target. You're drilling with cutlasses, which are short, curved swords designed for close combat. The blade is heavy and awkward at first. You're learning basic moves, how to swing, how to parry, how to thrust. You practice with a partner who's equally inexperienced. You accidentally whack each other more than you'd like. Your wrists ache from the unfamiliar motion. You develop blisters on your palms from gripping the handle. Someone more experienced watches and yells corrections at you. You try to adjust, but everything is happening fast. Pistols and muskets are part of your arsenal, but ammunition is limited, so you don't get much practice. Loading a flintlock weapon is complex and slow. You're measuring powder, wadding, ball, ramming it all down the barrel in the right order. If you get it wrong, the gun won't fire or might explode in your hand. You're shown the process a few times and expected to remember. When you do get to practice firing, the noise is shocking. The gun kicks back hard into your shoulder. The smoke burns your eyes and nose. Your ears ring for hours afterward. You try to aim, but hitting anything at sea on a moving platform is nearly impossible. Most naval combat ends up being close range where you can't miss. The hierarchy on a pirate ship is surprisingly democratic compared to naval vessels, but there's still a clear chain of command. The captain is in charge during chases and battles. The quartermaster manages daily operations and distributes loot. Below them are the sailing master who handles navigation, the gunner who manages weapons, the carpenter who keeps the ship together, and the cook who makes the terrible food. Then there's everyone else, which is you. You're at the bottom of this structure. You follow orders, do the work, and keep your mouth shut unless you've got something useful to say. Pirate captains are elected by the crew, which sounds democratic until you realise the captain usually has a strong personality backed up by fighting skills and a reputation. Nobody votes for the quiet, reasonable person. They vote for the intimidating individual who seems most likely to lead them to treasure and keep them alive. Once elected, the captain has authority during action. The rest of the time, major decisions are voted on by the whole crew. You get a say in where to sail and what targets to pursue. Your vote counts the same as everyone else's in theory. In practice, people tend to agree with whatever the captain and senior crew suggest. The quartermaster is often more important to daily life than the captain. He settles disputes between crew members. He distributes food and supplies. He leads boarding parties. He assigns duties. You'll interact with the quartermaster constantly. He's the one who tells you what work needs doing. He's the one who hears your complaints, though he usually won't care. He's the one who makes sure shares of loot are divided fairly. Cross him and your life gets harder. Every task you hate will somehow end up assigned to you. You'll get the worst watch times. Your food portions might be slightly smaller. It's all subtle, but effective. Discipline on a pirate ship is less formal than the Navy, but still exists. You can't just refuse to work or start fights without consequences. Minor infractions might earn you extra duties or loss of rum rations. Moderate problems could result in flogging, where you're tied up and whipped across the back with a rope. It's painful and humiliating, but not as severe as naval flogging with a cat o' nine tails. Serious offences like theft from crewmates or cowardice in battle can result in marooning. You're dumped on a tiny island or beach with minimal supplies and left there. It's effectively a death sentence, just slower and more cruel. Arguments and fights break out regularly when you pack aggressive men into a confined space with no privacy and constant stress. Someone looks at someone wrong. Someone makes a comment about someone's mother. Someone accuses someone of cheating at dice. Suddenly, fists are flying. You're rolling around on the deck, punching and grappling. Others form a circle to watch and shout encouragement. The fight continues until someone gives up, or the quartermaster breaks it up. You both get assigned punishment duties. You're scrubbing the deck together in sullen silence, both sporting bruises and split lips. Tomorrow you might be friends again, or the resentment might simmer. Either way, you're stuck together on this ship. Theft among the crew is taken seriously, because trust is essential. You don't have much, but what you do have is precious. If someone steals your spare shirt or your rum ration, that's a genuine problem. The victim usually reports it to the quartermaster. An investigation happens, which mostly consists of asking around and searching belongings. If the thief is found, the punishment is severe as a deterrent. Nobody wants to live among thieves when you're all crammed together. The social pressure keeps most people honest, or at least smart enough not to steal from their direct shipmates. Shares of plunder are distributed according to a system everyone agrees to before sailing. The captain gets a larger share, maybe 2 portions. The quartermaster and other officers get 1.5 portions. Everyone else gets 1 share. If you're injured in battle, you get compensation from the common fund. Lose an eye, get extra. Lose a hand, get more. It's a practical system that incentivizes people to fight hard, but also takes care of those who suffer for the crew. When loot is divided, Everyone watches carefully to make sure it's fair. The quartermaster weighs out portions, converts goods to approximate values, and distributes accordingly. Any hint of cheating would cause mutiny. Mutiny is the nightmare scenario for any captain. If enough crew members decide the leadership is incompetent or abusive, they can vote to remove the captain. Sometimes this is orderly, a formal vote and a change of command. Sometimes it's violent, with the captain and his supporters fighting the mutineers. You have to choose a side quickly. Support the winning side, and you're fine. Support the losing side, and you might find yourself marooned or dead. The tension before a mutiny is thick. Quiet conversations happen in corners. Alliances form. You're trying to figure out which way the wind is blowing so you don't end up on the wrong side of history. Daily decisions are often made by informal consensus. Someone suggests checking a nearby island for water. Someone else suggests chasing a distant sail. The officers discuss it briefly. If there's disagreement, they might call for a vote. You're part of this process. You raise your hand for your choice. The majority wins, and that's what you do. It's democracy of a sort, though in practice the most persuasive voices carry more weight. If you're new or quiet, your vote counts, but your opinion doesn't matter much. You need to prove yourself before anyone cares what you think. Reputation matters enormously in the pirate world. If you're known as brave and useful, you're valued. If you're known as lazy or cowardly, you're despised. Your reputation follows you between ships. Pirates talk when they meet in ports or when crews merge after a successful raid. They share stories about who's reliable and who's not. Building a good reputation takes time and consistent action. Ruining it takes one moment of cowardice or stupidity. You're constantly aware that your actions are being judged by everyone around you. New crew members are hazed and tested. You need to prove you can do the work and won't crack under pressure. Experienced pirates will give you the worst tasks, and watch how you handle them. They'll test your knowledge by asking you to tie specific knots or handle certain situations. They'll make jokes at your expense to see if you can take it. If you complain or show weakness, the hazing intensifies. If you grit your teeth and get on with it, you gradually earn acceptance. After a few months, you're no longer the new person. Someone else joins, and now you're part of the group that tests them. Alliances and friendships form based on shared suffering. You'll end up working closely with certain people, and those relationships matter. If someone has your back during a fight, you remember. If someone shares their rum when you've lost yours gambling, you remember. If someone covers for you when you mess up a task, you owe them. These informal debts and loyalties create a web of relationships that affect everything. Having friends on the crew makes life more bearable. Being isolated makes every day harder. You learn to be sociable even if you're naturally introverted, because you need allies. Leadership opportunities exist if you're competent and ambitious. If you show skill at navigation, you might assist the sailing master. If you're good with weapons, you might help train others. If you're strong and reliable, you might lead a boarding party. These roles come with slightly more respect and occasionally better conditions. You're still doing hard labor, but you're also making decisions and being listened to. Some pirates are content to remain regular crew. Others push to climb the informal ladder. Your ambitions depend on your personality and how much additional responsibility you want. Weather dominates every aspect of life at sea in ways you can't predict or control. You've already heard about storms, but let's talk about the other conditions that make you miserable. Fog rolls in thick and grey, reducing visibility to almost nothing. You can barely see the bow of your own ship. Other vessels could be anywhere nearby and you wouldn't know until you crashed into them. The damp seeps into everything. Your clothes are wet again. Your hair drips. The deck is slippery with condensation. Sound travels strangely in fog. You hear waves but can't tell which direction they're coming from. The ship slows because sailing blind is dangerous. You're stuck in this grey limbo, waiting for it to lift. Dead calm is its own form of torture. The wind stops completely. The sails hang limp and useless. The ship sits motionless on a glassy ocean. The sun beats down with no breeze to provide relief. The heat is oppressive and inescapable. You're sweating constantly. Your water ration feels insufficient. Time crawls by as everyone waits for wind that may not come for days. Tempers fray in the heat and boredom. Small annoyances become major frustrations. Someone's whistling drives you mad. Someone else is tapping their foot rhythmically, and you want to throw them overboard. You sit in whatever shade you can find and try not to move, because movement generates more heat. Extreme heat in tropical waters brings unique problems. The sun reflects off the water, attacking you from below as well as above. There's no escape from it. Your skin burns despite being tanned. Your lips crack and peel. You're dizzy from the heat. Some people get genuinely sick, collapsing from heat exhaustion. They're dragged into shade and given extra water while they recover. The deck itself gets so hot you can't walk on it barefoot. The metal fittings are too hot to touch. Below deck is worse because there's no ventilation, just still hot air that makes breathing feel like work. You stay on deck and suffer in the sun because at least there's theoretically a breeze. Cold northern waters bring the opposite misery. The wind is icy and cuts through your inadequate clothing. Your fingers go numb and turn white. You're clumsy with the ropes because you can't feel what you're doing. Your nose runs constantly and freezes on your upper lip. Your toes ache with cold inside your damp boots. Ice forms on the rigging overnight, making everything slippery and dangerous. Waves that crash over the deck are shockingly cold. The water finds every gap in your clothing and soaks you. You're shivering uncontrollably, your body trying to generate warmth through movement. Sleep is difficult because you're too cold to fully relax. Rain at sea is different from rain on land. It's often mixed with sea spray, so it's salty. It comes down in sheets driven by wind. It's horizontal as much as vertical. There's no shelter on deck. You're soaked within seconds. The rain finds its way down your collar, up your sleeves, into your boots. Everything is wet. The deck is treacherous. Ropes are slippery. Your hands can't grip properly. You're still expected to work in these conditions because the ship doesn't stop needing maintenance just because it's raining. You're hauling wet ropes that are heavier and more difficult. You're climbing wet rigging that's slippery under your feet and hands. One wrong move and you're falling. Lightning during storms is genuinely terrifying. The tall masts are natural lightning rods. You've heard stories of ships being struck, masts exploding into splinters, fires starting despite everything being wet. When you see lightning, you're hoping it hits somewhere else. The flash is blinding. The thunder is immediate and deafening. The ship shudders. Your heart races. You're pressing yourself low to the deck, making yourself small, praying to anything that might listen. The smell of lightning is sharp and metallic. If the ship is hit, there's chaos as everyone rushes to deal with damage while the storm still rages around you. Seasonal changes affect your route and experience. Summer in some waters means hurricane season. These massive storms are worse than regular storms by an order of magnitude. The waves are mountainous. The ship climbs up one side and crashes down the other. Everything not tied down becomes a projectile. You're genuinely convinced you're going to die. The noise is so loud you can't hear orders being shouted. You just hold on and hope. Hurricanes can last for days. The relentless battering wears down both ship and crew. When it finally passes, everyone is hollow-eyed with exhaustion and relief. Navigation gets complicated in bad weather. The instruments you use require seeing the sun or stars. Cloud cover means you're guessing your position. The sailing master does his best, using dead reckoning based on speed and direction, but it's not precise. You could be miles off course and not know it. When visibility returns and you take a new reading, you might discover you've been sailing in the wrong direction for days. This means more time at sea, more stretching of supplies, more crew morale dropping. Getting lost is a real possibility, and everyone knows it. Wind direction forces constant adjustments. You need to tack back and forth, which means the journey takes much longer than a straight line would suggest. A destination that looks a few days away on a map might take weeks in reality because you're zigzagging. Every tack requires coordinated effort from the crew. You're hauling on one side's ropes while releasing the other side. The boom swings across the deck with enough force to kill someone who's not paying attention. Someone yells, "Mind the boom!" and everyone ducks or moves. The operation happens dozens of times per day. It's exhausting and repetitive. Watches during bad weather are extremely unpleasant. You're standing on deck in whatever weather is happening, staying alert for 4 hours. In a storm, you're soaked and cold and scared, but you still have to watch for hazards. In heat, you're wilting, but you still have to stay awake. In fog, you're straining to see anything through the grey murk. Your relief can't come fast enough. When those 8 bells finally ring, you're released to stumble below and collapse in your hammock. You sleep the deep sleep of the exhausted. Then, far too soon, you're being shaken awake for your next watch, and the cycle continues. The horizon becomes hypnotic when you stare at it for hours. It's just a line where grey-blue water meets pale blue sky. Nothing changes. Your eyes lose focus. Your mind wanders. You think about home, about people you left behind, about better food and soft beds. You snap back to attention when someone walks past. You can't be caught daydreaming on watch. You shift your weight from foot to foot. You walk a few steps one way, then back. Anything to stay alert. You count things. You make up games in your head. You recite things you've memorized. Anything to pass the time. Wildlife at sea is limited, but occasionally interesting. Dolphins sometimes swim alongside the ship, leaping and playing in the bow wave. Everyone stops to watch because it's a break from monotony. They're beautiful and joyful, and remind you that life exists beyond this floating prison. Birds appear occasionally, which means land might be within a few days' sail. The type of bird gives clues about distance and direction. Seagulls mean very close. Other species have different ranges. The sailing master pays attention to these signs. You just enjoy seeing something that isn't water or ship. Sharks follow ships sometimes, attracted by the waste that goes overboard. You see their fins cutting through the water near the hull. They're hunting fish that gather near the ship. Everyone has a healthy respect for sharks. If someone falls overboard, those sharks might investigate. Swimming is not something pirates do for fun. The ocean is not your friend. It's full of things that can hurt you, and it's endlessly deep. The thought of being in that water, treading in the depths with unknown things below, is nightmare fuel. You stay on the ship no matter how unpleasant it gets. Port visits are what everyone lives for because they mean solid ground, fresh supplies, and temporary escape from the ship. The excitement builds as land is spotted. The mood on board improves immediately. People are smiling and making plans. You're sailing into a harbour, navigating carefully between other vessels and hazards. The anchor drops with a splash and rattle of chain. The ship settles. The constant rocking doesn't stop completely, but it's reduced. You're here. You've arrived. The relief is physical. Getting ashore involves climbing into smaller boats and rowing. The ship is anchored in deeper water and can't come right up to the dock. You're piling into a longboat with several other pirates sitting on the benches. Someone's rowing, the oars splashing rhythmically. You're getting closer to land with every stroke. Your legs are wobbly when you finally step onto the dock. Solid ground feels wrong after weeks at sea. It's not moving, but your brain expects it to move. You walk with a strange rolling gait, overcompensating for motion that isn't there. Everyone coming off a ship has this same walk. It takes a day or so to readjust. The smell of land is overwhelming at first. Fresh water, vegetation, cooking food, animals, people, earth. It's an assault of different scents after breathing only salt air for so long. Your nose doesn't know what to process first. You wander into town in a group, sticking together for safety and camaraderie. The first priority for most is drinking. Not water, but alcohol. Real alcohol from a tavern, not the weak grog from ship rations. You find an establishment that will serve your kind and pile in. The tavern is dark and loud and smells like spilled drinks and unwashed humanity. It's wonderful. You're ordering rum or ale or whatever they have. The first drink goes down fast. The second follows. You're sitting at a table with your shipmates, finely relaxed. The tension of weeks at sea is draining away with each drink. Conversations get loud and cheerful. Someone's telling an exaggerated story about the voyage. Someone else is singing badly. You're laughing at things that aren't that funny because you're just happy to be off that ship. The alcohol hits harder than usual because your body isn't used to real food and strong drink. Food import is a revelation. Real food, fresh food, hot food. You're ordering whatever's available and eating like you've been starving. Bread that isn't hard as rocks. Meat that isn't grey and salty. Vegetables, actual vegetables with colour and flavour. Fruit that's fresh and juicy. Your stomach isn't used to this richness. You're going to pay for this feast later, but right now you don't care. You're shoveling it in, barely pausing to chew. Your shipmates are doing the same. The table is covered with plates and everyone's eating enthusiastically. After food and drink comes entertainment. Some pirates head for gambling establishments. Others seek out other forms of company that involve paying for attention and affection. You're wandering the streets with coins in your pocket from your share of the last raid. Everything looks appealing. Street vendors are selling things. Shops have goods on display. You might buy new clothes to replace your salt-crusted rags. You might buy tobacco or other luxuries. You're spending freely because money means nothing when you might die on the next voyage. Enjoy it now while you can. Fights break out in port towns regularly. Different crews mix in taverns. Old rivalries surface. Someone insults someone. Suddenly chairs are being thrown and fists are flying. You're either joining in to support your crew or you're getting out of the way. The locals are used to this and mostly stay clear. The town guard might show up eventually to break it up, or they might just let it resolve itself. You end up with new bruises and maybe a black eye, but it was almost fun. The aggression and stress of weeks at sea had to go somewhere. Sleeping in a real bed is strange and wonderful. If you've got enough coin, you rent a room. The bed is stationary. The sheets are relatively clean. There's actual space and privacy. You lie down, and the world stays still. Your body slowly relaxes muscles that have been tensed for weeks. You're warm and dry and comfortable. Sleep comes fast and deep. You wake hours later, disoriented for a moment about where you are. Then you remember and smile. You're not in that hammock. You're not surrounded by snoring men. This is paradise by comparison. Baths are available in some ports, usually public bathhouses. You pay a small fee and get access to a large tub of heated water. The water is probably shared with others and not perfectly clean, but it's warm and there's soap. real soap. You strip off your horrible clothes and sink into the water. The heat is amazing. You scrub yourself properly for the first time in months. The water turns grey with released dirt. You scrub your hair, your beard if you have one, every part of you. You soak until the water cools. When you get out, you feel like a new person. Your skin is actually clean. You smell like soap instead of the sea. It won't last once you're back on the ship, but for now, it's glorious. New clothes are a priority for some. Your old outfit is falling apart and smells permanent. You find a shop or market stall selling ready-made garments. Nothing fits perfectly, but you're not fussy. You buy trousers, a shirt, maybe a jacket. You might buy a new hat to replace the one that blew overboard. These clothes are clean and intact. You put them on and feel human again. The old clothes get thrown away or burned. Nobody wants them. They've served their time and deserve to be retired. You'll ruin these new clothes soon enough, but that's a problem for future you. Medical attention is sought by those who need it. Port towns usually have someone practicing medicine of varying quality. If you've got a persistent problem, a wound that won't heal, a tooth that needs pulling, now's the time. The treatment is primitive and painful, but better than nothing. Tooth extraction involves pliers and no pain relief beyond rum. You sit in a chair, someone holds you down, and the practitioner yanks. The pain is intense and sharp. The tooth comes out, hopefully in one piece. Your mouth fills with the taste of copper, but at least the constant ache is gone. You're given a rag to bite on and sent on your way. Supplies are restocked during port visits. The quartermaster organises purchasing food, water, rope, canvas, tar, and everything else the ship needs. You might be assigned to help carry supplies from merchants to the longboat and back to the ship. It's hard work, hauling barrels and crates, but you're motivated because these supplies include the food you'll be eating. Freshwater barrels are filled from the town well. You're hoping this water stays fresher than the last lot. Barrels of salted meat and sacks of flour are loaded. Fresh fruits and vegetables are bought in quantity, even though they won't last long. Repairs to the ship happen in port while you're anchored, or sometimes pulled up on a beach if there's hull damage. The carpenter assesses what needs fixing. You're helping haul timber, hold planks in place, apply tar, whatever's needed. It's still hard work, but it's different from being at sea. You can take breaks. You can walk on solid ground. You can see the work progressing. A damaged mast might need replacing, which is a major operation requiring cooperation from the whole crew. You're rigging pulleys, hauling on ropes, guiding the new mast into position. It takes all day, but eventually it's done. Disease is a constant companion aboard ship, and it spreads like wildfire in the cramped conditions. You're living on top of each other with no hygiene and poor nutrition. Someone starts coughing, and within days half the crew is coughing. The sound echoes through the berth at night, a symphony of hacking and wheezing. Your own throat gets scratchy. Your chest feels tight. You're coughing up things you don't want to examine too closely. There's no medicine beyond rum and rest, neither of which you get enough of. You work through it because everyone works through it. The ship doesn't stop needing crew just because people are sick. Fevers sweep through periodically, and they're frightening. Someone's shivering despite the heat, wrapped in every scrap of cloth they own. Their skin is burning to the touch. They're mumbling nonsense, lost in fever dreams. You're giving them water when they'll take it, which isn't often. Most people recover after a few days of misery. Some don't. They just get weaker and quieter until one morning they don't wake up. Their hammock is empty. Their body is sewn into canvas and slipped overboard with minimal ceremony. Someone else takes their spot and inherits their belongings. Life continues because it has to. Scurvy is the big killer on long voyages, and it's entirely preventable if you had fresh food. The first signs are subtle tiredness and aching joints. You assume it's just normal exhaustion from the work. Then your gums start getting spongy and sore. Your teeth feel loose when you prod them with your tongue. Old wounds that healed years ago start hurting again. Bruises appear on your skin for no reason. You're constantly exhausted no matter how much you rest. Your body is literally falling apart from lack of proper nutrition. The only cure is fresh fruit and vegetables, which you don't have after the first week at sea. Advanced scurvy is horrific to witness. Someone's gums are swollen and dark. Their teeth fall out into their food. Their legs are covered in purple blotches. They can barely walk because their joints hurt so badly. Their breath smells like rot. They're too weak to work, just lying in their hammock waiting to either reach port or die. When the ship finally makes land and fresh food is available, the recovery is almost miraculous. Within days of eating oranges or limes, people start improving. The exhaustion lifts, the pain reduces. It's clear evidence of cause and effect, but supplies of fresh food are impossible to maintain at sea. Parasites are another cheerful aspect of ship life. You've got things living on you, and possibly in you. The lice in your hair and clothes are just the start. Fleas jump from person to person, biting and itching. You've got tiny mites burrowing into your skin, causing rashes. Your stomach sometimes feels wrong, cramping and uncomfortable. You're getting thinner despite eating your rations. Something might be living in your guts, eating your food before you can absorb it. There's nothing to be done about it. No treatment exists beyond hoping your body fights it off eventually. You accept that you're a walking ecosystem. Infections from small wounds are dangerous. That cut on your hand from a rope seemed minor, but now it's red and swollen. The skin around it is hot to the touch. Red lines are creeping up your arm. This is bad. The infection is spreading. Someone pours rum over it, which burns intensely. You're gritting your teeth to avoid screaming. They wrap it in relatively clean cloth and tell you to keep it dry, which is impossible on a ship. You're watching it anxiously over the next days. Sometimes the infection clears. Sometimes it gets worse and the only option is cutting away the infected flesh. Sometimes it progresses beyond saving and you lose the whole hand or arm, or you die. Luck determines which. Seasickness never fully goes away for some unfortunate souls. Most people adjust after the first week or two. Some never do. There's always that one poor individual who's constantly miserable, face pale and clammy, unable to keep food down. They're weak and dehydrated and utterly wretched. Everyone else has stopped being sympathetic because it's been weeks and they're tired of hearing about it. The sufferer just endures, day after day, never feeling right. Their only hope is reaching land, but then they'll have to get back on the ship eventually, and it starts all over again. Mental state deteriorates during long voyages. You're isolated from normal society, living in constant discomfort, eating terrible food, never properly resting. Your mood gets dark. Everything irritates you. Small problems feel like major catastrophes. You're snapping at people over nothing. Everyone's irritable and short-tempered, which creates a feedback loop of tension. Arguments escalate faster than they should. You have to actively work to keep your mood stable, reminding yourself that everyone struggling and taking things personally helps nobody. Homesickness hits at unexpected moments. You're working on some task and suddenly you remember something from before, a specific meal someone used to cook, the way morning light came through a window, a comfortable chair you used to sit in. The memory is so vivid and painful that you have to stop for a moment. Your chest aches with longing for normal life. Then someone yells at you to stop daydreaming and the moment passes. You shove the feelings down and get back to work because dwelling on what you've lost only makes it worse. The fear of death is always present in the background. You're surrounded by things that can kill you. The sea itself is deadly if you fall in. The work is dangerous with constant risks of falling or being crushed. Disease kills people regularly. Other ships might attack you. You could hit a storm that sinks the vessel. Every day you wake up not knowing if you'll see another sunset. Some pirates become fatalistic, accepting that death will come when it comes. Others are constantly anxious, always looking for the next threat. You probably fall somewhere in between, trying not to think about it too much. Sleep deprivation is chronic. The watch system means you never get a full night's rest. You're sleeping in broken chunks between duties. 4 hours on, 4 hours off, around the clock. Your body never fully recovers. You're always tired at some level. Your thinking gets foggy. Your reactions are slower. You make mistakes you wouldn't normally make. Everyone's in the same state, so mistakes multiply. The officers are supposed to be more rested so they can make clear decisions, but they're often just as exhausted. It's amazing the ship functions at all given that everyone's operating on minimal sleep. Nightmares are common when you do sleep. Your mind processes the stress and fear through disturbing dreams. You're drowning in dark water. You're falling from the rigging. You're in a battle and everything's going wrong. You wake with a gasp, disoriented in the darkness of the berth. You hear others shifting and muttering in their sleep, fighting their own nightmares. You lie back in your swaying hammock and try to calm your racing heart. Eventually you drift off again, hoping for dreamless rest, but probably not getting it. Accidents happen regularly and they're often gruesome. Someone's not paying attention, and a rope under tension snaps, whipping across and hitting them. Someone's fingers get caught in a pulley and crushed. Someone slips on the wet deck and breaks a bone. Someone gets struck by the boom and knocked unconscious. You're always witnessing these incidents or hearing about them. Each one is a reminder that you're one moment of carelessness away from serious injury. You try to stay focused and careful, but exhaustion and familiarity breed complacency. It probably won't happen to you, you tell yourself, right before it does. Combat and raiding are the actual point of piracy, but they're far less glamorous than stories suggest. Most of your time is spent looking for targets, which means sailing around hoping to spot a merchant vessel. You're scanning the horizon constantly during your watch. Every distant sail creates excitement. Is it worth chasing? The officers examine it through spyglasses and make decisions. Most ships you spot are either too fast, too well armed, or heading in the wrong direction. You sail on, disappointed. Days or weeks pass between actual encounters. The boredom is crushing. When you do spot a potential target and decide to chase, the pursuit can take hours. You're adjusting sails constantly to squeeze out maximum speed. You're watching the distance close gradually. The other ship has spotted you and is trying to escape. If they're faster, you'll never catch them and eventually give up. If you're faster, you'll slowly gain ground. The anticipation builds. Your stomach is tight with nervous energy. You're checking your weapons and trying to remember your training. The experienced pirates are relaxed and joking. The new ones are pale and quiet. You're probably somewhere in between. Most merchant ships surrender without fighting once they realize they can't escape. Pirates fly a black flag to identify themselves. The message is clear: surrender, and you'll probably live. Fight, and you'll definitely die. The merchant captain makes a calculation. His cargo isn't worth his life or his crew's lives. He strikes his colours and heaves to. You're pulling alongside, throwing grappling hooks to tie the ships together. Boarding parties cross over while everyone else keeps weapons ready in case of tricks. The merchant crew is gathered together and guarded, while the ship is searched. Searching a captured ship is exciting because you might actually find something valuable. You're pulling open hatches and digging through cargo holds. Most merchant vessels carry boring things like timber, cloth, grain, or other bulk goods. These have value, but they're heavy and difficult to transfer. You're looking for compact valuables, coins, jewelry, fine goods, spices, anything that's worth a lot relative to its weight. Sometimes you find a strong box with the captain's money. Sometimes you find passengers with valuables. Sometimes you find spirits or wine, which is claimed immediately for the crew's enjoyment. Transferring plunder between ships is hard work. You're forming chains of people passing items hand to hand. You're lowering barrels and crates into boats and rowing them to your ship. You're hauling everything aboard and stowing it. The sea doesn't stop moving during this process. The two ships are grinding together, their hulls scraping. You're jumping between them with armfuls of goods, timing your movement with the waves. Drop something and it's gone into the water. Trip and you might fall between the hulls and get crushed. You're sweating and straining for hours while the officers supervise and make decisions about what's worth taking. Sometimes you take the whole ship if it's better than yours or worth selling. The captured crew is transferred to your old ship or set adrift in boats with minimal supplies. You're now sailing a new vessel with fresh supplies. The change is welcome, even though it means learning a different ship's peculiarities. Every vessel handles slightly differently. The ropes are arranged differently. The space below deck has a different layout. You're adapting and making it yours. The captured ship usually has better food supplies since they just left port. You're eating relatively fresh provisions for a few days before it's back to the usual hardtack and salt pork. Actual fighting is rare but terrifying when it happens. Some merchant ships are armed and their captain decides to resist. Some naval vessels actively hunt pirates and catch you. Suddenly you're in combat and it's chaotic and loud and nothing like training. Cannons are firing with massive booms that hurt your ears. The ship shudders with each shot. Splinters fly when cannonballs hit the hull. Smoke fills the air, making it hard to see or breathe. You're loading and firing weapons according to your assignment, moving through the steps automatically because there's no time to think. Muskets and pistols have limited accuracy and take forever to reload. You fire once, maybe hit something, probably miss. Then you're frantically going through the reloading process while people around you do the same. Powder, wadding, ball, ram it down, prime the pan, cock the hammer. Your hands are shaking from fear and excitement. The gun is hot from firing. Everything's slippery with sweat and sea spray. You bring the weapon up and fire again into the smoke and chaos. You've no idea if you're hitting anything. You're just making noise and hoping the enemy is more scared than you are. Close combat happens if ships actually make contact. You're climbing over the rails onto the enemy deck with your cutlass in hand. Men are swinging weapons at each other. The noise is incredible. Metal on metal, shouting, screaming, gunshots. Everything happens fast. Someone comes at you and you react instinctively, blocking and swinging back. The blade connects with something and jarring impact runs up your arm. You keep moving, keep swinging. Your training is gone. You're just fighting to survive. The deck is slippery. Bodies are in the way. You stumble over someone and barely keep your footing. The smell of combat is smoke and fear sweat and something else metallic and organic. Your heart is hammering so hard you can feel it in your throat. Time feels strange, simultaneously too fast and too slow. You're hyper-aware of everything and unable to process it all. Someone's shouting orders, but you can't make out the words over the noise. You're next to a shipmate one moment and then you're not. You've been separated by the flow of movement. You're on your own trying to stay alive until it's over. Combat ends suddenly. Someone surrenders, or one side retreats, or the ships break apart. You're left standing there, shaking with adrenaline, barely believing you survived. You're checking yourself for injuries and finding some you didn't notice getting. A cut on your arm, bruises forming already. Your clothes are torn. Your weapon is still in your hand, and you have to consciously relax your grip. Around you, people are doing the same, slowly coming down from the intense state of alertness. Some are sitting down heavily. Some are being sick over the rail. Some are tending to wounded shipmates. The aftermath of battle is grim. You're dealing with damage to your own ship first. Holes in the hull need patching immediately. Damaged rigging needs repair. Sails with holes need replacing or stitching. Everyone works frantically because a damaged ship is vulnerable. The carpenter is assessing structural damage and directing repairs. You're hauling timber and hammering patches into place. You're splicing broken ropes. You're doing whatever's needed to get the ship functional again. It'll take days of work to properly repair everything, but you need to be good enough to sail within hours. Injured crew members need attention. The surgeon is overwhelmed if there are many casualties. Those with minor wounds wait while critical cases are handled. You might be helping hold someone down while the surgeon digs out splinters or stitches gashes. The person's screaming or unconscious or grimly silent. There's mess everywhere. The surgeon's hands are slick as he works quickly, trying to save whoever he can. You're feeling sick, but you hold steady because he needs help. Some people die despite treatment. They're too badly hurt or infection sets in. Their bodies join others being prepared for burial at sea. Navigation tools are primitive and require skill you're slowly learning by observation. The compass is the main instrument, a magnetized needle floating in liquid that points north. Simple in concept, but reading it accurately on a moving ship takes practice. The compass housing swings in gimbals to stay level, but it's still jittering and moving. You're trying to read the exact bearing while everything rocks. The officers handle most navigation, but you're expected to understand basics. Knowing which direction you're heading matters when you're on watch and need to maintain course. The astrolabe and cross staff are used to measure the angle of the sun or stars above the horizon. This gives your latitude, how far north or south you are. The process involves sighting along the instrument while standing on a moving deck, which is nearly impossible to do accurately. The sailing master takes multiple readings and averages them, hoping to get close to correct. Longitude is even harder to determine. There's no reliable method except dead reckoning, estimating based on speed and direction over time. Errors accumulate quickly. You might think you're 50 miles from land when you're actually 100 miles away in the wrong direction. Charts are precious and often inaccurate. They're hand-drawn maps showing coastlines, islands, hazards, and depth soundings. Information comes from previous sailors' observations, which may or may not have been correct. Islands might be in the wrong position. Reefs might not be marked. New hazards might have appeared since the chart was drawn. The sailing master studies these charts constantly, comparing them to observed reality and making corrections. You're sometimes called on to help with soundings, dropping a weighted line to measure water depth. The information helps position the ship relative to known depths on the chart. Landmarks are crucial when near land. Distinctive mountains, rock formations, or coastal features help confirm your position. Everyone scans the coastline, comparing what's visible to what's described on the chart or in sailing notes. Sometimes you recognize a location from a previous voyage. Sometimes everything looks unfamiliar, and you're not sure if you're where you think you are. Running aground is a constant fear near land. Hit a reef or sandbar and your ship could be damaged or stuck. You'd be helpless against waves and weather, possibly sinking in sight of land. Weather prediction is based on observation and experience. Certain cloud formations mean storms. A particular quality to the air suggests wind changes. The behavior of birds or sea creatures might indicate approaching weather. The old sailors have a feel for these things, and their predictions are often accurate. You're learning by watching and listening. A ring around the moon means rain. Red sky at dawn means bad weather coming. The ship's barometer shows pressure changes that correlate with weather patterns. When pressure drops suddenly, everyone prepares for a storm. Sailing at night is eerie and dangerous. You can't see hazards. Other ships might not be visible until you're dangerously close. Navigation relies on stars, which requires clear skies. Cloud cover means you're sailing blind, hoping your course is correct and there's nothing in the way. The darkness on the ocean is complete. No light pollution like you're used to from modern life. Just blackness in every direction except the stars overhead. The water makes strange sounds. The ship creaks and groans. Your imagination works overtime, turning normal sounds into potential threats. Islands offer both opportunities and dangers. They might have fresh water, fruit trees, game animals, all the things you desperately need. They might also have hostile inhabitants, hidden reefs, or no resources at all. Approaching an unknown island is tense. You're watching for coral that could tear out the hull. You're watching for signs of people. Some islands are known pirate havens where you can safely stop. Others are controlled by colonial powers that would happily hang you. Knowing which is which requires information from other sailors and a bit of luck. Anchoring is more complex than just dropping the anchor and stopping. You need suitable depth and bottom composition. Too shallow, and you'll ground at low tide. Too deep, and the anchor won't hold. Rocky bottom, and the anchor might not catch. You need protection from wind and waves, or the ship will be battered against the anchor chain. The anchor itself is a massive piece of iron requiring multiple people to handle. Dropping it involves careful positioning, releasing the chain slowly so it doesn't tangle, then ensuring it's caught properly on the bottom. Raising anchor is exhausting group labour. The capstan is a large vertical cylinder on deck that winds up the anchor chain. Long poles are inserted into holes around it, and everyone pushes, walking in circles. The chain comes up link by link, dripping and heavy. It feels endless. Your shoulders burn. Your feet slip on the wet deck. Someone's singing a shanty to keep rhythm. You push on the beat, step, push, step, around and around. Eventually the anchor breaks free from the bottom and is hauled up to the ship. It's secured, and you're free to sail. You're breathing hard and sweaty, but there's no rest, because now you need to unfurl sails. Tides affect everything near shore. The water level rises and falls twice daily by varying amounts depending on the moon phase. High tide might give you enough depth to safely anchor near shore. 6 hours later at low tide, you'd be stuck on the bottom. You need to know tide times and heights, which requires local knowledge or printed tide tables if you're lucky enough to have them. Getting the timing wrong can be disastrous. You're constantly aware of the tide state when operating near land. Currents are invisible rivers in the ocean that affect your speed and direction. You might be sailing one direction, but the current pushes you another way. Your actual progress over the seafloor is the combination of your sailing and the current. Strong currents near land or between islands can be dangerous. You're sailing toward a safe channel, but the current is pushing you toward rocks. You need more speed or a different angle to compensate. Fighting a current is exhausting and sometimes impossible. Better to work with it when you can, using it to speed your journey rather than fighting it. River mouths and estuaries are tricky to navigate. Fresh water from rivers meets salt water from the ocean, creating complex currents. The depth changes unpredictably. Sandbars shift position with each flood. You're proceeding slowly, constantly taking soundings, ready to change course instantly. These locations are often good for ambushing merchant ships that need to use the river, but they're risky. If something goes wrong, you could end up stuck in shallow water where the current might push you aground. Local knowledge is invaluable and often obtained by capturing local fishermen and convincing them to pilot you through. Sailing close to shore lets you see civilization, and it's both tempting and frustrating. You're near land, but can't just sail into most harbours. Colonial ports have navies and militias that would attack pirate ships on sight. You're sneaking past at night, or staying far enough offshore to avoid attention. You see lights from towns and settlements. You imagine the fresh food and comfortable beds there, but approaching would mean battle or capture, so you sail on toward the few ports that tolerate pirates. The irony of being surrounded by potential supply points you can't use is not lost on anyone. The pirate economy operates through a mix of plunder, trade, and smuggling. You're not just robbing ships randomly. You're part of a network that includes fences who buy stolen goods, suppliers who provide necessities, and corrupt officials who look the other way for a cut. The goods you steal need to be sold, which happens in ports where asking questions is unfashionable. Someone knows someone who will buy 100 barrels of sugar, no questions about origin. The price is below market value, but that's expected for hot goods. You get coin, the fence gets legitimate-looking goods to sell at a profit. Everyone's happy except the original owner. Pirate havens exist in places where government control is weak or non-existent. Isolated islands, remote coastal settlements, places too poor or troublesome for colonial powers to bother with. These locations welcome pirate money and don't care about morality. You can sail in openly, resupply, repair your ship, and relax without fear of arrest. The local economy runs on pirate spending. Taverns, shops, and services cater specifically to your needs. Prices are inflated because you're a captive market, but you pay anyway because options are limited. The local governor, if there is one, receives regular payments to ensure his continued cooperation. Smuggling is often more profitable than straight piracy. Colonial powers impose taxes and restrictions on trade. Merchants hate paying these costs. You can offer to transport goods between ports, avoiding the official channels and tax collectors. The merchant pays you less than the tax would cost, but more than you'd get from robbing him. You sail into a quiet bay away from the official port. Small boats come out under cover of darkness. Cargo is transferred. Everyone profits except the government. It's less dramatic than ship battles, but more reliable income with less risk of injury. Currency is complicated because every nation issues its own coins. You've got Spanish pieces of 8, English pounds, French livres, Dutch guilders, Portuguese coins, and more. Each has different value, and some are more trusted than others. Spanish silver is preferred because it's widely accepted and relatively consistent. You're constantly calculating exchange rates in your head, or accepting someone else's calculation and hoping you're not being cheated. Some transactions happen in trade goods rather than coin because the value is clearer. A barrel of rum is worth a certain amount anywhere. A cow is worth what someone will pay for it, but at least it's tangible. Gambling away your shares happens depressingly often. You've survived danger and earned a decent portion. You're in port with coin in your pocket. The tavern has dice games. You're confident in your luck after surviving the sea. You start playing and winning a bit. Then you start losing. You're convinced your luck will turn around. You keep playing. Before you know it, your entire share is gone. You're broke until the next prize. You watch your shipmates make the same mistakes and you judge them silently while forgetting you did the identical thing last time. The cycle repeats because gambling provides excitement and hope, even false hope is better than none. Debt between pirates is taken seriously. You might borrow from a shipmate to buy something in port, promising to repay from your next share. That debt is witnessed by others and you're expected to honour it. Failing to pay makes you untrustworthy, and that reputation spreads. Nobody will help you in future if you're known to welch on debts. Conversely, being reliable with debts builds trust, and people are more willing to deal with you. The informal economy runs on reputation and word of mouth. Your character is your credit rating. Bribing officials is standard practice. The port captain needs payment to look the other way when you enter harbour. The customs inspector needs payment to ignore your cargo. The garrison commander needs payment to not arrest you. These bribes are factored into the cost of doing business. Sometimes the quartermaster handles it officially from the ship's funds. Sometimes individual pirates need to pay their own way. The amounts vary based on how much risk the official is taking and how much they think you can pay. Negotiation happens, and usually everyone reaches an acceptable number. It's corrupt, but it's how the system works. Letters of marque are legal documents that technically make you a privateer rather than a pirate. A government issues you a letter permitting you to attack that nation's enemies. In theory, this makes your actions legal warfare rather than piracy. In practice, it's a thin distinction. You're still robbing ships, but now you have paperwork saying it's acceptable. When things go wrong, that letter might save you from hanging, or it might not, depending on which nation caught you and whether they recognize the authority that issued your letter. Some pirate ships carry multiple letters from different nations, using whichever is convenient at the time. Selling a captured ship is good profit if you can find a buyer. You've got a vessel that's stolen but functional. Someone wants a ship and doesn't care about its history. Negotiation happens, and hopefully you get a fair price. The ship is signed over with forged papers claiming legitimate ownership. The buyer knows it's false but goes along because they're getting a good deal. You walk away with coin to split among the crew. The ship disappears into the merchant fleet with a new name and new paint. Nobody asks questions because everyone benefits from not knowing. Retirement is something pirates dream about but rarely achieve. The plan is always to make one last big score and retire rich. Buy land, open a tavern, live peacefully on your accumulated wealth. The reality is most pirates either die at sea, get captured and hanged, or spend everything they earn as fast as they get it. The few who do successfully retire usually do so quietly, claiming their money came from legitimate trade. They move somewhere nobody knows their history and start fresh. It's possible, but requires discipline most pirates don't have. Pardons are occasionally offered by governments trying to reduce piracy. Surrender, give up the life, and you'll be forgiven for past crimes. Some pirates take these deals, especially as they get older and tire of the constant danger. The terms vary, but usually involve promising to never return to piracy, and sometimes providing information about other pirates. Taking a pardon is seen as betrayal by those still active. You're a turncoat who sold out. But from your perspective, you're getting out alive with a chance at normal life. It's a personal calculation of whether continuing is worth the risk. Capture means almost certain execution. Colonial powers hate pirates and make examples of captured crews. You're tried quickly in a legal proceeding that's mostly for show. The verdict is predetermined. You're guilty, and the sentence is hanging. The execution is public to serve as warning to others. You're marched to the gallows with a crowd watching. Some prisoners give defiant speeches, others pray or weep. The noose goes around your neck. The floor drops. It's supposed to break your neck quickly, but sometimes it doesn't work properly, and you strangle slowly. Your body is left hanging for days as a warning. This is what you're risking every time you sail under the black flag. The ship's hierarchy creates specific roles that some people specialize in beyond basic crew work. The carpenter is essential because he keeps the vessel from sinking. He's constantly inspecting the hull for damage, replacing rotten planks, maintaining the masts, and performing emergency repairs during battle. You see him moving around with his tools, poking at suspicious wood, muttering about problems. When something breaks, he's immediately called. His skills are valuable enough that he receives extra shares and everyone treats him well. Annoying the carpenter is stupid because you need him more than he needs you. The gunner manages all weapons and ammunition. He maintains the cannons, ensures they're properly secured, and trains crew on their use. He's responsible for the powder magazine, a room in the hold where barrels of gunpowder are stored. This is the most dangerous place on the ship. One spark and the entire vessel explodes. The gunner is paranoid about fire safety near his domain. No lanterns allowed, no metal tools that might create sparks. Everyone entering removes their shoes. He inspects everything constantly and yells at anyone being careless. His paranoia keeps everyone alive, so his behavior is tolerated. The sailing master handles navigation and course planning. He's usually an experienced sailor who understands weather, currents, and reading charts. He advises the captain on routes and sail configuration. During actual sailing, he's calling out adjustments and directing the crew's efforts. You're following his orders about which ropes to haul and when. He's trying to optimize speed and efficiency. Sometimes his decisions seem arbitrary, but usually there's reasoning based on wind direction or wave patterns you don't fully understand. Trust in his expertise keeps the ship moving efficiently. The cook deserves mention again because his role is thankless and crucial. He's working in a hot galley, preparing food that everyone complains about, dealing with limited supplies and constant ship motion. Everything he makes tastes terrible, but that's not entirely his fault, given the ingredients available. He's doing his best to keep everyone fed, which is harder than it sounds. Managing the fire safely while the ship rocks takes skill. Planning meals to stretch supplies between ports requires careful calculation. He receives more complaints than thanks, but the ship would starve without him. The bosun manages the rigging, sails, and anchors. He knows every rope and its function. He directs maintenance work and coordinates the crew during sail changes. When the captain orders more speed, the bosun translates that into specific actions for specific people. He's shouting orders constantly, directing the ballet of men and ropes that makes the ship function. He's usually someone who came up through the ranks and knows every job because he's done them all. His authority comes from competence rather than just position. Even the officers listen when he says something won't work. Some ships have a surgeon, though his presence depends on whether anyone with medical knowledge joined the crew. He's rarely a trained doctor, more often someone who's picked up skills through necessity. He can set bones, stitch wounds, and perform basic surgery. His tools are simple: knives, saws, needles, thread. His techniques are brutal by modern standards, but effective given the limitations. Having a surgeon improves survival chances significantly. Crews with surgeons are more willing to take risks knowing there's someone who might save them if they're injured. Ships without surgeons see more people die from treatable injuries. Musicians might be kept on board if they're skilled enough. Music helps coordinate work and maintains morale. A good fiddler or drummer is worth their space. They're not expected to do as much manual labour because their primary job is providing entertainment and rhythm for work songs. During long, boring stretches at sea, music is one of the few pleasures available. A musician who can play well and knows a good repertoire becomes popular quickly. Some are former crew who picked up instruments. Others joined specifically as musicians because they're not suited for hard labour, but have this valuable skill. Translators or linguists are useful on diverse crews or when dealing with ships from various nations. Pirates come from many backgrounds and speak different languages. Someone who can communicate between groups helps coordinate effort and prevent misunderstandings. When approaching a prize or negotiating, having someone who speaks the target's language provides advantage. You can issue commands they'll understand or extract information. These skills aren't formally recognized with extra shares usually, but being useful in multiple ways makes you valuable to the crew. Former naval sailors bring training and discipline that's useful. They know proper sailing techniques and military tactics. They're accustomed to the harsh life at sea. The transition to piracy is relatively easy for them, just with different rules and better profit sharing. These men often end up in leadership positions because their experience shows. However, they need to adapt to the more democratic pirate culture. Trying to impose strict naval discipline on pirates goes poorly. Those who adjust and learn to lead through respect rather than fear do well. Escaped slaves sometimes join pirate crews and are usually accepted as equals. Pirates are outside respectable society already and care more about competence than background. The traditional social hierarchies don't apply as much at sea. If you can do the work and fight when needed, your past doesn't matter. This rough equality makes pirate ships attractive to people fleeing oppression or persecution. It's still a brutal, difficult life, but it's freedom of a sort. Some former slaves become successful pirates, commanding respect through their abilities. Younger recruits, though still adults, often struggle initially with the harsh conditions. They might have joined seeking adventure without understanding the reality. The first weeks are a shock as romance meets filth and hardship. Many adapt and become competent crew members. Some never adjust and remain weak links, tolerated but not respected. A few desert at the first opportunity. The life filters out those who can't handle it fairly quickly. You're left with people who are either naturally tough or have become tough through necessity. Older pirates are less common because the lifestyle kills people before they age much. Those who do survive into their 40s or beyond are either very skilled, very lucky, or both. They're treated with respect because their survival proves capability. They've seen everything and rarely panic. Their advice is worth hearing. However, the physical demands of ship work become harder with age. An older pirate might transition into a less labor-intensive role if his skills allow. Otherwise, he struggles on, knowing his options are limited. Retirement seems unlikely, so continuing is the only choice. Women occasionally appear on pirate ships, despite the common belief that they're bad luck at sea. Some disguise themselves as men, and their true identity only comes out later. Others join openly, usually as companions to male pirates, but sometimes as crew in their own right. Their presence complicates the social dynamics, but some crews accept it. Fighting and sailing don't require being male, just being strong and competent. A few women become famous pirates, commanding ships and crews, proving that gender matters less than ability and force of personality. Superstitions are taken seriously because sailors are facing forces beyond their control. You believe in patterns and omens because believing you can predict the unpredictable provides comfort. Starting a voyage on a Friday is unlucky. Everyone knows this. Sailing on Friday means something will go wrong. Whether the belief creates the outcome through self-fulfilling prophecy, or whether there's genuine pattern doesn't matter. Nobody wants to test it. The captain who orders departure on Friday faces grumbling and resentment before anything even happens. Whistling on board summons wind according to tradition. A gentle whistle might bring a helpful breeze when you're becalmed. A loud whistle might bring too much wind, creating a storm. Most pirates avoid whistling altogether because why risk it? If someone whistles by habit, they're immediately yelled at to stop. You're not sure if you believe this, but everyone else does, so you go along. The social pressure to observe superstitions is strong. Breaking them marks you as either foolish or deliberately disrespectful to the crew's beliefs. Seeing certain birds is interpreted as omens. Albatrosses are lucky and must never be harmed. Killing an albatross brings disaster to the ship. Everyone believes this absolutely. If an albatross lands on deck, you're giving it space and waiting for it to leave naturally. Seagulls generally mean land is near, which is good news. Ravens or crows are debated. Some say lucky, others say unlucky. You're watching the birds and trying to remember which ones mean what. The older sailors have strong opinions and you're following their lead. Women on board are traditionally bad luck, though this superstition is complicated by the fact that some crews include women. The belief is that female presence angers the sea. In reality, it probably stems from the practical complications of mixed-gender crews in tight quarters. But the superstition persists. Ships that carry women are viewed with suspicion by traditionalists. Every problem that occurs gets blamed on female presence, whether or not there's any connection. Some female pirates push back against this attitude through sheer competence, forcing respect despite superstition. Changing a ship's name is extremely unlucky according to sailor tradition. The vessel has an identity and changing it confuses or angers the sea gods. Pirates capturing a ship often rename it anyway, because sailing around in something called the Merchant's Pride doesn't suit the new purpose. Some crews perform elaborate ceremonies to properly rename a ship, asking permission from the sea and making offerings. Others just paint a new name on the stern and hope for the best. Either way, there's underlying nervousness that bad luck might follow. Personal talismans and charms are common. You might carry a rabbit's foot, a special coin, a religious medal, or some object from home. This item is believed to protect you or bring luck. You're touching it before danger or during storms. Other pirates have similar objects with personal meaning. Nobody mocks these beliefs because everyone has something they're superstitious about. The psychological comfort provided by lucky charms is real, even if the actual magic isn't. Rituals around crossing the equator exist among experienced crews. First-timers crossing the line for the first time must undergo initiation ceremonies. These range from silly to genuinely unpleasant depending on the crew's culture. You might be doused with seawater, covered in tar, forced to participate in mock trials, or subjected to other hazing. The point is marking the transition from inexperienced to experienced sailor. Once you've crossed the line and survived the ritual, you're part of the club. It's tradition and bonding through shared misery. Dreams are given significance, especially recurring or vivid ones. Dream about drowning, and you're worried about the voyage. Dream about treasure, and you're optimistic about prospects. Dream about home, and you're homesick. Other pirates will listen to your dreams and offer interpretations. Some dreams are considered prophetic warnings that should be heeded. If multiple people have bad dreams before a voyage, that's serious concern. The captain might actually delay departure, because ignoring such strong omens would be foolish, and the crew wouldn't sail willingly anyway. Tattoos serve as identification and personal history. You might get tattoos to mark significant events, visited locations, or affiliations. A cross means you've crossed the equator. An anchor indicates Atlantic crossing. Certain symbols show which crews you've sailed with. The tattoos are done by whoever on board has the steadiest hand and some artistic ability. The process involves needle and ink, painful but tolerable. The results are often crude but meaningful. Your body becomes a map of your experiences. Other sailors read your tattoos and know something of your history without asking. Curses are believed to be real and dangerous. Wronging someone badly might result in them cursing you. Whether the curse has actual power or just makes you paranoid and unlucky through psychology is debatable. But you avoid cursed people and items. If something is said to be cursed, you're not touching it. A ship with a reputation for bad luck might be called cursed. Crew members desert. Nobody wants to sail on it. Eventually the ship is abandoned or sold to someone willing to risk the curse. Usually the bad luck continues because a ship that's actually poorly maintained or badly sailed will keep having problems regardless. Protective rituals are performed to ensure safe voyages. These might be Christian prayers if the crew is religious, or other traditions depending on cultural background. Pouring rum into the sea as an offering to appease ocean spirits is common. The logic is that the sea gives up fish and allows passage, so giving something back maintains balance. Whether this works is unprovable, but it costs little and makes everyone feel safer. Before major voyages or battles, some form of ritual happens to invoke protection or fortune. Reading natural signs is considered skill rather than superstition, but it blurs the line. Experienced sailors predict weather by observing clouds, wind patterns, wave behavior, and animal activity. They're usually accurate because they're reading actual physical signs, but it looks like magic to inexperienced crew. The sailing master stares at the horizon and announces a storm is coming. Hours later, he's proven right. His knowledge is based on experience and observation, but it seems like prophecy. You're learning these skills slowly, starting to notice patterns yourself. Bad luck is blamed on violating taboos. Why is the voyage going badly? Someone must have broken a rule. Did anyone whistle? Was the departure day improper? Is there a cursed item on board? The crew starts looking for explanations. Sometimes a scapegoat is identified, someone who violated a superstition, or who's just generally unpopular. Social pressure builds on this person to fix whatever they've done. They might need to perform some compensating ritual, or make an offering. In extreme cases, the bad luck is blamed on a specific person who must leave the ship at next port. Stories and legends are shared during downtime, becoming part of the culture. Tales of ghost ships crewed by the dead, sailing forever. Islands that appear and disappear. Mermaids who lure sailors to their doom. Sea monsters in deep waters. These stories are entertainment, but also carry warnings and lessons. Don't sail into unknown waters. Don't trust strangers. Respect the ocean's power. The stories get embellished with each telling. Someone claims to have seen something strange and the tale grows. Whether any of it is real doesn't matter as much as the shared mythology it creates. Long voyages create a strange sense of time distortion. You've been at sea so long that you've forgotten what day it is. The date is meaningless except to the officers keeping the log. Your life is measured in watches and meals and the endless cycle of work and rest. Seasons change slowly. You notice the sun's angle shifting. The weather gradually gets warmer or colder. These transitions happen so gradually that you barely perceive them until suddenly it's completely different from when you started. You've lost track of how long you've been sailing. Weeks, months, it all blurs together. The monotony becomes oppressive during long crossings. You're in the middle of an ocean with no land visible in any direction. You're weeks from the last port and weeks from the next. Every day is identical. Same terrible food, same uncomfortable sleep, same aching body from the work, same faces of your shipmates. Nothing changes. Nothing happens. You're trapped in a repeating loop. Some people handle this better than others. Those who can find small pleasures or occupy their minds cope. Those who need variety and stimulation slowly go stir-crazy. Space limitation means you've explored every inch of the ship within the first week. There's nowhere new to go, no private spots you haven't found. The ship is maybe 100 feet long and 30 feet wide. You've seen it all. There are no surprises left. This familiar environment becomes claustrophobic. You know every stain on every plank. You know which boards creak. You know where the rat holes are. The ship is simultaneously your entire world and far too small. You fantasize about wide open spaces, fields stretching to the horizon, forests where you can walk in a straight line for hours. Anything that isn't this confined wooden box. Interpersonal conflicts intensify because you cannot escape each other. That thing your shipmate does that slightly annoys you becomes increasingly intolerable over weeks. The way he chews, the sound he makes when breathing, his stupid laugh. These tiny irritants grow into major grievances because you're exposed to them constantly with no break. You're developing genuine hatred over minor habits. You fantasize about throwing him overboard. He's probably fantasizing the same about you. Only the shared need to keep the ship functioning prevents outright violence most of the time. Conversations run out of new material. You've heard everyone's stories. You've discussed every topic multiple times. Someone starts telling a story and you're finishing their sentences because you've heard it before. There's desperate attempt to find new things to talk about. You're discussing hypothetical situations. You're having philosophical debates about pointless topics. Anything to engage your mind with something other than the immediate reality. Sometimes you're just sitting in silence because there's nothing left to say, and talking for the sake of talking is exhausting. The fantasy of what you'll do at the next port becomes elaborate and detailed. You're planning exactly which tavern you'll visit first, what you'll order, where you'll sleep, what you'll buy. These plans are discussed and refined endlessly. Everyone's describing their perfect port day. The conversation happens over and over with small variations. It's all theoretical because you're nowhere near land yet, but planning gives you something to think about besides the present discomfort. The actual port visit will probably disappoint compared to the fantasy, but that doesn't stop the dreaming. Physical deterioration is gradual but relentless. You're thinner than when you started, despite doing heavy labor, because the food doesn't provide adequate nutrition. Your clothes hang loose, your face is gaunt, your energy is lower. You're still working because you must, but everything is harder. Your body is consuming itself slowly. The lack of fresh food means you're developing deficiencies. Your gums are permanently sore, your joints ache, you're covered in bruises that don't heal properly. You look around and see the same signs in everyone else. You're all slowly wearing down. Mental state becomes fragile on very long voyages. You're isolated from normal society, living in constant discomfort, without adequate rest or food. Some people develop strange behaviors, talking to themselves, becoming obsessed with pointless tasks, laughing at things that aren't funny, crying suddenly over nothing apparent. These aren't always signs of complete breakdown, just stress responses to an unnatural situation. Most people recover once back on land, but occasionally someone really does crack, becoming unable to function. The crew has to manage them as best they can until reaching port where they can be left behind. The ship itself shows wear from the voyage. It needs constant maintenance, but between ports there are limits to what can be done. The sails have tiers that are patched, but the patches have patches. Ropes are frayed and have been spliced repeatedly. The deck shows wear. Everything looks shabby and tired. The ship matches the crew's state. You're all holding together through determination and necessity, but clearly need proper rest and refit. When you finally reach port, the ship will need extensive work before it's truly ready to sail again. Storms during long voyages are particularly demoralizing because they reverse your progress. You're fighting through a storm for days, just trying to survive. When it clears and you check your position, you've been blown backward. You're further from your destination than before the storm. All that suffering achieved nothing except survival. You need to resail the same waters you already covered. The psychological impact of lost progress is crushing, but there's nothing to do except continue. You can't quit in the middle of the ocean. You must sail on and hope for better conditions. Running low on supplies creates increasing anxiety. The water barrels are getting empty. The food is running out. You're hoping to reach land before supplies are completely exhausted. Rations are reduced to stretch what remains. You're even hungrier and thirstier than before. Everyone's calculating how long supplies will last versus how far you need to go. The officers are consulting charts and making plans. Do you head for the nearest land even if it's not the intended destination? Do you trust the navigation and stay on course? These decisions affect survival, and everyone has opinions. Spotting land after a long crossing is joyous. Someone in the rigging calls out, "Land ho!" and everyone not actively working rushes to see. There it is, a dark line on the horizon that's definitely not clouds. It's solid earth. The mood transforms instantly. People are smiling and laughing. The oppressive feeling lifts. You're going to make it. The land gets slowly closer over hours of sailing. Details emerge. Trees, beaches, hills. You're drinking in the sight of something that isn't ocean. The beauty of land is overwhelming after weeks of seeing only water. You never appreciated how much visual variety exists on shore until you were deprived of it. Approaching port after long voyage requires careful presentation. You can't sail in looking like the desperate, hungry crew you are. The ship is cleaned up as much as possible. You're making yourselves presentable, putting on your best clothes, trying to look capable rather than bedraggled. First impressions matter for negotiating and trading. A crew that looks defeated will be taken advantage of. A crew that looks dangerous and competent gets better terms. So you're projecting confidence even though you're exhausted and relieved to be anywhere with solid ground. The act continues until you're anchored and can finally relax. The reality of the pirate life versus the myth is stark once you've lived it. The stories make it sound romantic and free. The actual experience is hard labor, constant discomfort, frequent fear, and occasional violence. Yes, there's freedom from normal society's rules. Yes, there's potential for wealth from successful raids. But the cost is high. Your health deteriorates. Your body accumulates damage. You might die at any moment from disease, accident, battle, or storm. The treasure you earn often gets spent immediately, because living for the moment is the only philosophy that makes sense when tomorrow is uncertain. Most pirates aren't career criminals by choice. They're desperate men who see no better options. Maybe they were sailors who got tired of brutal naval discipline and poor pay. Maybe they were laborers who couldn't find work. Maybe they were fleeing legal trouble or persecution. Piracy offers opportunity that's closed to them otherwise. The democratic structure and profit-sharing look appealing compared to most employment available to poor men. But it's not really free choice when the alternatives are equally terrible. You're choosing the least bad option from a menu of bad options. The violence of piracy is something stories gloss over or glorify. Taking a ship by force involves terrorizing people. You're threatening them with weapons, sometimes hurting them to enforce compliance. These are often ordinary merchants and sailors just trying to earn a living. You're ruining their lives for your profit. Some pirates justify this by saying they only target the wealthy or colonial powers. Others don't bother justifying anything. You're uncomfortable with the violence initially, but you become desensitized over time. It becomes just another aspect of the work. This psychological numbing is its own form of damage. The Brotherhood of Pirates is real, but complicated. You do form bonds with shipmates through shared hardship. You trust them with your life during battles and storms. There's genuine camaraderie and loyalty within crews. But it's also a relationship based on necessity and mutual benefit. Betray the crew or become a liability, and that brotherhood evaporates quickly. You're only valued while you're useful. The friendships are real, but conditional. This creates a strange dynamic, where you're simultaneously closer to these men than family, but also know the relationship has limits. Authority dynamics create constant low-level tension. The democratic pirate system is better than rigid naval hierarchy, but it's not truly equal. Captains and officers have more power and privileges. They get larger shares and better accommodations. They make the important decisions. Your vote counts, but realistically, you're following leadership most of the time. Disagreements about direction or strategy create factions. Some people want to take more risks. Others want to play it safe. These debates can turn heated because everyone's life depends on collective decisions. Finding consensus when people have different priorities is challenging. The relationship with civilized society is permanently adversarial. You're criminals. You're wanted by multiple nations' authorities. You can never safely return to normal life without a pardon. The ports that tolerate you do so because you bring money, not because they approve of you. You're outside respectable society permanently. This creates a strange freedom but also isolation. You can't have a normal family or stable home. You're always moving, always hiding aspects of yourself. Some pirates wear their outlaw status proudly. Others feel the loss of normal life keenly. Most exist somewhere between those extremes. The environmental damage from pirate lifestyle is something nobody thinks about, but it's real. Ships dump waste directly into the ocean. You're throwing garbage overboard constantly. Broken equipment, food scraps, human waste, everything goes into the water. Careening operations on beaches leave tar and debris. Pirate settlements generate pollution with no waste management. You're taking resources from islands without thought to sustainability. Not that anyone in this era thinks about environmental impact, but the damage accumulates. The ocean seems infinite, so using it as a dump seems harmless. The long-term consequences aren't your problem because you won't be alive to see them. Gender dynamics are complicated on the rare ships that include women. Despite some women proving themselves as capable pirates, most crews are entirely male. This creates an environment where women exist as fantasy or abstract concept, rather than actual people. Conversations about women are crude and objectifying. The attitudes aren't unique to pirates, it's standard for the era, but the all-male environment intensifies it. The few women who do sail as pirates often adopt masculine behavior and dress to fit in. They prove themselves through being tough and competent. Some gain genuine respect. Others are tolerated but never fully accepted. The culture is aggressively masculine in ways both good and bad. Cultural diversity on pirate ships is greater than in most contemporary settings. You're sailing with men from different nations, ethnicities, and backgrounds. English, French, Spanish, Dutch, Portuguese, African, Caribbean, all mixed together. This creates friction sometimes due to language barriers or cultural differences, but it also breaks down some prejudices. You're working alongside people you were taught to view as enemies or inferiors. You learn they're just people trying to survive like everyone else. This doesn't eliminate prejudice, but it complicates it. Pirates are often more tolerant of diversity than mainstream society, simply because competence matters more than background. The lack of future planning is both liberating and troubling. You're living day to day with no long-term goals beyond the next prize. No retirement savings, no property investments, no building toward anything. You're spending your shares as fast as you earn them. This makes sense when your life expectancy is short and uncertain. Why save for a future you probably won't see? But it also means you're trapped in the lifestyle. You can't accumulate enough to leave. Every voyage you need to sail again because you're broke. The cycle continues until you die or get captured. Breaking out requires discipline most pirates lack. The physical toll accumulates until you're aged beyond your years. Men in their 30s look 50. Years of sun exposure, poor diet, hard labor, and stress accelerate aging dramatically. Your skin is weathered and leathery. Your hair is grey if you still have it. Your teeth are mostly gone. Your body is scarred and damaged from accumulated injuries. You move stiffly because your joints don't work properly. You look in a mirror when you get the chance and barely recognize yourself. This is the price of the life. You're trading your body and health for freedom and potential wealth. The question of whether it's worth it has different answers depending on who you ask. Some pirates wouldn't choose any other life. They value the freedom and adventure despite the hardships. They'd rather die free than live as servants or laborers in normal society. Others regret their choices and wish they'd found different paths. They're trapped by circumstance and past decisions. They continue because they don't know how to do anything else and have nowhere else to go. Most fall somewhere in the middle, accepting this life with its goods and bads because it's the life they've got. Looking back at your modern, comfortable life from the pirate perspective is jarring. You had reliable food every day, clean water from a tap whenever you wanted, shelter from weather, medical care when sick or injured, comfortable sleeping arrangements, entertainment and communication technology, safety and security most of the time. You took all of this completely for granted. You complained about minor inconveniences that pale compared to daily pirate existence. The contrast is almost comical. Your worst day in modern life is vastly better than an average day as a pirate.